Hello, everyone. I don't know. I'm just going to fill space. Okay, there it goes. One. Good afternoon, everyone. If you could give me a sound and a video check to make sure that this is running before I start the interview. We're here again. This is day 3 at the United Antiwar Coalition Conference. And I'm here with Bernadette. We're going to talk about what is going on in the Philippines. I don't think even Philippines are on most people's radar. It's all Syria and Yemen. So for people who have no idea of what is happening, what is just the basic overview of what the struggle is right now?
Yeah, well, the Philippines was a former U.S. direct colony from 1898 to 1946 and is now a neo-colony from 1946 to the present time. Most people probably who have been watching the news are probably following coverage on President Rodrigo Duterte and what's happening in Mindanao, in the southern Philippines, with now the presence of ISIS. I think what is more important, the most important thing that people have to realize is that the U.S. troops have never left the Philippines. The Philippines has always been a site of U.S.-led war, militarism, and dictatorship. And that being said, this martial law declaration, history shows us that the martial law declaration really is a tool of destabilization to derail the peace negotiations between the government of the Republic of the Philippines and the National Democratic Front of the Philippines, or the NDFP. The National Democratic Front of the Philippines, or the NDFP, is mandated to represent the revolutionary government that exists in 71 out of 81 provinces in the Philippine countryside. It is a revolutionary government born out of a 50-year-long armed revolutionary struggle led by the Communist Party of the Philippines, the New People's Army, against U.S. imperialism and foreign control over Philippine resources, Philippine territory, and Philippine political affairs, and especially the Philippine economy. So what the people have to know, what's not being covered in the news, are the peace negotiations. President Rodrigo Duterte, early on in his presidency, had a lot of fiery rhetoric around the Philippines not being a vassal state of the U.S. anymore and being a sovereign state, and really took measures to veer away from U.S. control, U.S. hegemony of Philippine affairs by speaking with leaders in Russia and China. And that happened right before this martial law was declared, right before the announcement of ISIS in Marawi City, before the start of the Maute Group. So we also have to look at the timing of this so-called ISIS threat in Marawi. Comes at a time when the President Duterte is talking to Russia, talking to China, and is also the peace negotiations have reached a stage where there's an agreement now in principle on free land redistribution, which is a vital, critical economic reform that could pave the way for the eradication of poverty and basically overthrow the rule of the landlord in the Philippines.
All right, so what would you say to people who are just learning about this issue, and people who would maybe want to help, stand in solidarity with you? What do you need from us?
We need people to really stand for self-determination and to realize that the U.S. is in the country right now through ISIS, funding sectarian violence, and really propping up Islamophobia as a real tool to justify U.S. military boots on the ground. And right now there are U.S. Special Operations Forces, U.S. military troops boots on the ground that are, engaged in combat operations in Mindanao and the southern Philippines under the auspices of this so-called war on terror, when really the target here is the national liberation struggle of the Philippines.
All right, so we're seeing in the Philippines, just to be clear with people who are not familiar with this, are we seeing the same kind of funding, arming, and support that we're seeing like in Syria? Because people are more familiar with that situation, and this is just playing out the same way, where they're funding the people who are actually oppressing the people and terrorizing the people.
Yeah, like I said, the first war on Muslims that the U.S. ever launched was back in 1898, and those were Filipino Muslims in the southern Philippines. And so Mindanao has been a laboratory for U.S. counterinsurgency. And so what we're seeing in Syria, in West Asia, and North Africa, those were all patterned after the counterinsurgency operations that were perfected and tested in the Philippines first at the turn of the 20th century.
That's breathtaking, and it is one of the subjects that is really blacked out in the media, because even though you get mass disinformation on what is going on, you don't even hear the Philippines mentioned. I mean, it doesn't even merit even a footnote on the evening news. So. Well, thank you for sharing that with us, and my channel is open to you if you need in the future.
Stay progressive, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
If whatever we can do to spread the message. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. All right. Thank you, guys. Peace. All right.